Hello and welcome to the series Will You Take Me Home? It is a story about the acceptance of technology by humans. This series was prepared by Agnieszka Landowska from the Gdańsk University of Technology and was made possible by the European Union's Erasmus Plus project CHADOPT, which stands for Teaching Students How Children with Neurodevelopmental Disorders Adopt and Interact with Technologies. The series Will You Take Me Home explores how people decide whether to use the technologies proposed to them. It is about technology acceptance models and the reasons why you incorporate certain technologies into your life. Consisting of 7 parts, it explores diverse theories and approaches, trying to answer the question why specific user groups use or not use technical solutions. You are watching part 3 about background theories that influenced creation of adoption models. Links to the other parts of the series can be found in the comments. There are many theories behind technology adoption models. Most of them come from the psychological domain. However, sociological and marketing research has also contributed to these models. Theories can be divided into those that primarily explore intrinsic factors for the use of technology and those that take into account the external environmental context. This division is not strict, as most theories incorporate both intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. Among theories that explore internal factors influencing human behavior and decision-making, one might find a group of motivational models, such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Herzberg's two-factor theory, and many more. These models bring a number of motivational factors that shape human action, dividing them into the intrinsic and extrinsic ones. Theories of reasoned action and planned behavior share the assumption that human actions are intentional and are influenced by various factors. These two theories have had an intensive influence on technology adoption models. Additionally, the attitude theory highlights the attitudes strongly predicting intentions and actions. Self-efficacy theory adds confidence in one's ability to perform a behavior as an additional factor that directly impacts motivation and persistence. Another set of theories that contribute to technology adoption models emphasizes the role of the environment in which we perform our actions. The diffusion of innovation model, mentioned already in part 1 of this series, has many derivative models that attempt to explain how a novel solution spreads throughout society. Other models, such as social cognitive theory and the theory of interpersonal behavior, consider other people and their actions as factors that influence our behavior. The value-cost model comes from an economic background and focuses on customer decision-making. Some of those theories, but not all of them, are explained in detail further in this video. Attitude theory significantly influenced technology adoption models. In fact, many contributors have influenced this approach, including Alport, Katz, Bandura, Pavlov, and Festinger. Therefore, it is more accurate to refer to them as attitude theories. According to these researchers, an attitude is a predisposition to respond positively or negatively to a specific object, which can be an item, person, action, decision, or anything else. Attitudes are not born with us. They change through persuasion, such as arguments and advertisements, by social influence, including social pressure, by experience, or cognitive dissonance. Attitude changes everything, which is good news, we can change our attitudes and thus how we feel about something. An attitude has three components: affective, behavioral, and cognitive, which together form an ABC model. The affective component is an emotional reaction. For example, I enjoy using this app. The behavioral component is the way we describe our actions. For example, I use the app every day. The cognitive component is what we think about the object, such as this app helps me stay organized. These three components are key to measuring user experience with technology. The theory of reasoned action was developed by Fishbein and Eisen in 1975. Its main purpose is to predict and explain why people do certain things. The theory assumes that people act rationally and intentionally rather than impulsively. The model defines a basic chain of motivation that includes attitude, intention, and behavior. With attitude already defined, let's define the other two concepts. A norm is a shared rule or standard behavior considered acceptable within a group, society, or culture. An intention is a mental state that reflects a person's readiness to plan or perform a specific behavior. This approach is frequently used when we have a problem doing something, for example, doing exercise. An attitude might be, doing exercise would be good for my health. A norm might be, my parents believe I should exercise. An intention might be, I will start exercising next Monday. The behavior would be whether or not I actually make it to the gym on Monday. The model goes beyond that and defines what influences both attitudes and norms. Attitudes are formed as a result of two components. A belief is a mental conviction or acceptance that something is true even if it cannot be fully proven. For example, exercise is good for health is common knowledge, although almost none of us have read the research that proves this point. Some beliefs can be rational and formed in early childhood. However, a belief alone is not enough to form an attitude, which means I feel like doing it. So the second component is an evaluation of the expected outcome. In this example, the evaluation concerns exercise. Is it important to me? Does it suit me? Is it my priority now? Both belief and evaluation of the outcome must align to form an attitude. The second component, subjective norm, has two parts: referent belief and motivation to comply. Referent belief is the belief about whether specific people or groups, called referents, think you should or shouldn't perform a certain behavior. For example, my friend thinks I should start exercising. Motivation to comply is defined as the degree to which an individual is willing to follow or conform to the expectations or opinions of the important referents regarding a specific behavior. For example, we might ignore a friend's opinion or take it into account. Both components are required to form a subjective norm. The theory of reasoned action has some limitations. The TRA assumes rational decision-making, which is not always the case. It also ignores habits, emotions, and environmental constraints. Furthermore, it does not explain why, even with a positive attitude and positive subjective norm, we still do not go to the gym. In 1991, Eisen extended the TRA model to the theory of planned behavior by adding perceived behavioral control. Perceived behavioral control is the perception of how easy or how difficult it is to perform a behavior when considering available resources and potential obstacles. For example, I have enough time and skills to exercise, or, as the case might be, I don't have enough time and skills to exercise. This component is formed by two concepts: control belief and the perceived importance of control. Control belief is an individual's belief about factors that may facilitate or hinder performing a behavior. It focuses on resources, opportunities, or obstacles: money, time, skills, or support. Each control belief is linked to the perceived importance of that factor and how strongly it influences the ability to perform the behavior. For example, I don't know how to do yoga, but I can learn. Please note that perceived behavioral control is a third component that forms an intention. However, it also influences whether an intention will transform into actual behavioral action. Consequently, if your focus is on obstacle, you're likely to avoid the gym even if you intended to go. Social cognitive theory is a psychological framework developed by Albert Bandura. It explains how people learn and perform behaviors through the interaction of personal, behavioral, and environmental factors. Behavior, personal factors, such as cognition and emotions, and the environment influence each other. For example, a teacher's confidence, which is a personal factor, affects their teaching style, which is a behavioral factor, which shapes classroom dynamics, which is an environmental factor. According to Bandura, learning occurs through a process called observational learning or modeling, which is supported by several key elements. First, observation. We learn by watching others perform a behavior and noting the consequences. Second, modeling involves demonstrating a behavior so that others can learn from it, and it is directly linked with observation. This process is intentional and often structured. For example, this applies to laboratory settings where a teacher shows how to perform an experiment, as well as to parents who teach children to say thank you by doing so themselves. Third, we learn through imitation, which is directly copying someone else's behavior after observing it. Personal experiences, which started with imitation and perhaps followed by independent trials, allow us to learn through our own actions and the outcomes of those actions. We also learn through social interaction, such as communication, collaboration, and especially receiving feedback from others. The model of PC utilization, MPCU, is a framework that explains how individuals decide to use personal computers or technology in general. Proposed by Thompson, Higgins, and Howell in 1991, it is based on Triandi's theory of interpersonal behavior. Imagine an employee considering whether to use a new computer system at work. Their decision is influenced by several interconnected factors. First are social factors. In this example, the employee considers what important people, colleagues, or managers expect. If their peers and supervisors value using the system, the employee will feel social pressure to adopt it. Second, there is affect towards use, which is the emotional response to using the system. If the employee enjoys working with technology or finds it interesting, they are more likely to use it. The third factor is complexity, or the perceived difficulty of using the system. If the system seems complicated, the employee might avoid it. If it seems easy, adoption is more likely. Another component is facilitating conditions, which are the resources and support available, such as training, technical help, or hardware. If these conditions are favorable, the employee will feel confident using the system. The job fit factor indicates whether the system helps the employee to perform their job better. If the system improves productivity or makes tasks easier, the employee is motivated to use it. People also consider long-term consequences. Employees consider future benefits or drawbacks, such as career growth, recognition, or changes in workload. The value-cost model explains how customers make purchasing decisions based on perceived value and perceived cost of a product. Perceived value consists of benefits or utility gained from a product or service. A product has functional value if it solves a problem or fulfills a specific need. Some products are bought for emotional value. How does it make the customer feel? Good, proud, or maybe safe? Ownership of certain goods is considered a symbol of high status in society. Therefore, products also have social value. Social value is also a factor when owning or using a product secures belonging to a certain group, such as peer group. This is how fashion enters the stage. Social value is interconnected with brand value, which represents whether the brand is perceived as trustworthy, reputable, or aspirational. In the IT sector, Apple products are often given extra brand value because of the legend of Steve Jobs. Products and services also have experiential value. It is the experience that is enjoyable or memorable, and they have innovation value. Is the product new, unique, or cutting edge? Now let's look at the second variable in the equation. The perceived cost is not only the monetary price or fees, but also the non-monetary costs, such as time, effort, and risk connected with using the product or service. One more important category of cost is the cost of lost opportunities. If we buy this product, we won't buy another one. The decision rule in this model is simple. The customer chooses the option where the total perceived value exceeds the total perceived cost. The theory of innovation diffusion was already mentioned in part 1 of the series. Its core insight is that the diffusion of innovation is a process that occurs through a social system. Rogers classified customers based on their openness to innovation and the resulting delay in adopting the new product. As shown here, customer segments are ordered by time of adoption of technology, and they are innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. A key aspect of Rogers' model is the recognition that individuals' approach to new technologies varies significantly, and they may adopt new solutions for various reasons. The model was further extended, adding some insight into the history of innovative products. Geoffrey Moore extended the Rogers approach by moving the bell curve to the right and adding a breaking point he called the chasm. He predicted that some technologies would never take off, reaching only a small group of early enthusiasts and never the majority of the market. His research shows that some people will never use a promising technological product for some reasons. Gartner Company extended the theory further by adding the hype cycle, which shows what happens to technology expectations over time. Each hype cycle breaks down the 5 key phases of a technology life cycle. The innovation trigger phase starts when a new technology is discovered. Stories and media interest about early proof of concept experiments create a lot of publicity. Often, there are no usable products, and it is unclear whether they can be sold. In the peak of inflated expectations phase, the early publicity produces a number of success stories, but also a lot of failures. Some customers take action, many do not. In the through-off disillusionment phase, people lose interest when experiments and implementations don't work. The companies that make this technology can either succeed or fail. This is called crossing the chasm. Investments continue only if the surviving providers improve their products so that early adopters are satisfied. During the slope of enlightenment, people start to understand how the technology can benefit the business. Technology providers are creating second and third generation products. More businesses are investing in pilots, but cautious companies are still hesitant. Then the new product reaches plateau of productivity when mainstream adoption starts to take off. Criteria for assessing provider viability and the product are more clearly defined. The technology's broad market applicability and relevance are clearly paying off. This figure humorously illustrates attitudes towards a new product. Please note that apart from defining customer segments, the innovation diffusion theory also provides a number of factors influencing customer decisions. Relative advantage is the degree to which an innovation is perceived as an important improvement over the product or idea it replaces. For instance, smartphones replaced feature phones because they offered internet access, apps, and enhanced functionality. Then, compatibility represents how consistent the innovation is with the existing values, experiences, and needs of potential adopters. Advanced systems adoption is easier, for example, for users who are already comfortable with digital tools. The complexity factor shows how difficult the innovation is to understand and use. For example, a simple mobile payment app spreads faster than complicated enterprise software. From the perspective of the innovators and early adopters, the fourth factor, trialability, is crucial. Trialability is defined as the extent to which an innovation can be experimented with before full adoption. Free trials of products and services encourage adoption. Observability represents how visible the benefits of the innovations are to others. This feature is important for the early and late majority customer segments. For laggards, no feature of a system will convince them to adopt a new product. They will only switch to new technology if they are compelled to do so. To sum up, this is a timeline of background theories and technology acceptance models. Please note that most of the underlying psychological theories were proposed in the 70s and 90s. After the development of the first technology acceptance model, which was based heavily on the theory of reasoned action and the theory of planned behavior, over 10 years passed before new adoption models were proposed. The papers introducing the unified models of technology adoption listed all the previous models and theories reviewed and combined to define a unified approach. In summary, when creating your own model of technology adoption, consider which theories and models fit to the characteristics and context of the system in use. However, some common basic concepts can be distinguished. A belief is a mental conviction or acceptance that something is true, even if it cannot be fully proven. A norm is a shared rule or standard of behavior considered acceptable within a group, society, or culture. An attitude is a learned predisposition to respond consistently in a favorable or unfavorable manner toward a given object. Intention is a mental state that reflects a person's readiness to plan or to perform a specific behavior. It might be important to distinguish between a belief, a norm, an attitude, and an intention. Think about which one you want to measure and how. There are also some proposed applicability areas of the models. For example, if intrinsic factors matter most, consider the theory of reasoned action or the theory of planned behavior. If you want to explore external factors, social cognitive theory might be useful. The model of PC utilization fits work environments technologies. Diffusion of innovation models might be used to analyze approaches to novel and innovative solutions. The latter model and the value cost model apply best to technologies treated as products. You have watched part 3 of the series Will You Take Me Home, which is about the acceptance and adoption of technology by humans. The comments list all parts of the series. See the comments for literature on the subject as well.